returning here with us here in 2018, so we're very delighted to have Jackie back with us. She's an executive coach, leadership, and team builder. She helps leaders and organizations achieve extraordinary transformations. She works with leaders and organizations who are deeply committed to achieving their strategic vision but are struggling to excel. Her transformations are achieved through either one-on-one coaching, leadership and team development workshops, strategic planning, and related organizational consulting projects. She's passionate about helping leaders lead with emotional intelligence, which has a significant impact on their effectiveness, employee engagement, and organizational culture. She supports clients by ensuring they have the necessary tools, and we're going to talk about some of those, to build amazing teams and to thrive. Her expertise includes organizational change, professional and executive coaching, organizational development, emotional intelligence, team dynamics, talent management, and strategic human resources. She's the CEO of Kindall Evolve Consulting, and she's previously been a senior vice president at Radio One. So please join me in welcoming Jackie.
Thank you, Ken. It's a pleasure to be here with you all today. As Ken said, this is my second time here, and I'm delighted that they agreed to have me back. So we are actually going to do some work this morning. So I don't have a deck of slides. There's a workbook, and we're going to actually do some work. So hopefully you guys are all right with moving around and sharing with your neighbor. So everybody has this workbook, hopefully. If not, they're Ken has some. All right. So thanks for the introductions. That was very helpful, especially to see the breadth of industries. And I heard a lot of people say they're curious. So hopefully that's about this topic, and I can hopefully share some information that will satisfy your curiosity. So we're talking about leveraging self-awareness and using that awareness as part of your career transition. And the reason I really am passionate about self-awareness is I have seen, whether it's through individual professionals, I've seen through leaders who have developed their self-awareness skills and had a lot of wonderful results as a result of that. And so we'll spend some time talking about what self-awareness is, and then we'll spend more time looking at how you develop it and how you leverage that for your career transition. So if you will take a look at page 2, just to get an idea here. I won't go over the intention because we got a little bit of that this morning when we did the introductions, but I want to spend some time looking at the ground rules. Because this is a workshop format and we will be doing some sharing. We have, how much time do we have?
75 minutes.
Okay, so we have a finite amount of time, so I have found that creating some understanding and agreement around how we're going to work together has been helpful. So I'm asking everyone if you could please fully participate. I'll be asking for share outs, participate with your neighbor, give it your all, put devices away. I'll put my phone on Do Not Disturb, so hopefully you can do the same. If people are sharing and there's something that you don't agree with or something that you're curious about, be curious, but please, no judgment. I want it to be a safe time for all of us to be open, which goes to the next one, which is open mind. There may be some things in here that are concepts that you've heard before. There might be some new things. I'm just asking you to be open to a different way of thinking on some of the topics. And of course, being respectful of one another is important, and also to have fun. So we want to have a little fun this morning. I like to try to have fun while I'm doing workshops so that people, it creates takes some of the pressure off of all of us. So can everyone agree with those ground rules?
Yes.
All right. Anything you want to add as it relates to how you want us to engage today? No? All right. So you see the agenda there on the bottom of page 2 as well. We'll talk a little bit about what self-awareness is, and I'll also share a little bit about emotional intelligence, because you can't really talk about self-awareness without talking about emotional intelligence. So we'll spend a little time there. And then we'll talk about some techniques to build self-awareness, and there's some tools in here. and we'll do a little work as well. So, takes me to page 3. How many of you have studied emotional intelligence at all? Okay, so I see about five or six hands. All right. So for those of you who have, do you mind sharing what your understanding of it is and how you've used it? Yes.
Well, I went to school for psychology, so I went to Morgan State down in Baltimore. And I guess just keep it quick, simple. My understanding of emotional intelligence is just understanding how people feel and how that relates to how they act, and then your interaction, how your interaction should be with them according to their emotions. Absolutely.
Thank you very much. You hit most of the key components of emotional intelligence, which is about there's emotional intelligence and there's the social intelligence. So the emotional part is about you. So understanding yourself, understanding your values, understanding your emotions, not getting rid of your emotions. Some people think it's about just, not being angry. So it's much more than that. It's understanding what triggers your emotions, understanding how you can manage your emotions in a way that is effective and that gets you what you want, gets you where you want to be. So there's the awareness of your emotions, and then there's also the self-management. And then the social intelligence piece of it is others. So how you relate to other people, understanding other people. You hear a lot about empathy. And even now there's the field is sort of moving towards compassion, more so than just empathy. But how the people who can walk into the room and maybe there are no words being shared, but you're able to pick up on the nuance. You're able to see how someone is feeling just based on their being. In leaders especially, these are skills that really differentiate your top leaders from the average. But it's not just for leaders. So as Kim mentioned, I work with a lot of leaders, but I also work with people who maybe they're aspiring to move into a leadership role, but this is an area that's holding them back, their emotional intelligence. People don't always call it emotional intelligence. Sometimes they'll say, we have someone who's very strong technically, but they can't get along with people. Or have someone who we are ready to promote into a senior leadership role, but they've had some issues building trust on their team. So it has a lot of different descriptors, but it really boils down to knowing yourself, knowing how to manage your own self, motivate yourself, and then also knowing the same in others and using all of those skills to build relationships. So wanting to be the person who has solid relationships, who's able to relate to other people, who's able to leverage their own being to help other people. The field of emotional intelligence came about in 1985 out of Yale University. So it's a relatively new field, as these things go, and it has evolved over time. So initially the thought was, what is it that separates the top performers from the average performers? It's got to be more than just IQ, because there are people who are really smart, but they're not moving forward and they're not excelling. So what is it? And that's how the field started.
EQ. EQ.
Yeah.
EQ.
Right. They found that it was EQ. So I'm not going to go fully into an EQ workshop because that's not why we're here, but I have to share it because self-awareness is a cornerstone of emotional intelligence. So if you look at page 3, you'll see the different components of it. Self-awareness and self-management at the top, and then social awareness and relationship management.
You don't have page 3. Come through. Page 4.
Yeah, so you should have a diagram.
No. You mean on this page?
So maybe something must have happened with the graphics. So take a look in at page 4. Sorry about that. Not sure what happened with the printer version control or something. So you'll see on page 4, thanks for bringing that out, the different domains. So there's 4 domains: self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management. And within those, there are competencies. So as I said, emotional intelligence and social intelligence, the field has evolved over time. There are different models out there that you will see. This is a model that comes from Daniel Goleman's book, Primal Leadership, which is a wonderful book, by the way. You've read it. It's great. There's a newer version of the model that has 12 competencies. But this is the one I use for training because I feel like it's more robust. So you'll see the different competencies there. We're going to spend time on self-awareness. So if you look at page 5, it says 15 techniques, but there are actually 10 listed. So part of that is by design, hoping that we can, as a group, come up with 5 more techniques. So I'm going to just quickly run through the 10 that are on here, and then we're going to do some practice with some of them. So, identifying your emotional hot buttons. Has anybody spent any time trying to figure out what it is? How helpful was that?
Very helpful. Because sometimes you can get people to get triggered.
Yep. Yes.
Very helpful.
Very helpful. How did it help
The
you?
main thing, it leads me where to go to deal with others.
Yes, that awareness alone has saved many people's career. You know, it's that thing where people will remember, you might do great work for 12 months and then you have one bad week where you're, for whatever reason, maybe there's some stressors in your life that are new and you're out of control. Maybe you're snapping at people, maybe you have an argument at work, any of these things happen, and that's the thing that people remember. So being able to identify what is it that really pushes my buttons is the first part, and then how to manage it. Right? Now that I know, what do I do? You know, what are the signs that it's about to happen? This is all part of self-awareness, identifying, and then the self-management piece comes in. Once you are aware, what do you do with it? So identifying your emotional hot buttons is one technique. It's usually where we start when I'm doing work with my one-on-one coaching clients that have this as an issue. So what are some of the ways that you can identify your emotional triggers?
Just monitoring your own response before you say it.
Yes.
Unfortunate.
Monitoring your response. And
Think before you say it.
think before you say. So for people who haven't been able to manage that, they're actually not thinking, they're just saying. And this is part of how the brain works. So there's the part of the brain that is responsible for our emotional response, which is the limbic system. And then there's the part of the brain that is responsible for our executive functioning. And that's the thinking part of our brain. When we're in these moments where we say something and we say, oh gosh, I wish I wouldn't have said that. I could think of 10 ways I could have said that better. It's because the emotional brain has fired off and it has taken control before the thinking brain has had a time to engage. So in emotional intelligence, they call that the Amygdala Hijack, which is the part of the brain that's responsible for the fight or flight. So figuring out what your triggers are and figuring out how to slow down the emotional part of the brain and get the thinking brain going is a technique that we're going to talk about on the next page. So very good. Anybody else? What are some ways that you can identify your emotional hot buttons?
In your personal life, you'll be aware through the people you interact with in the state of trust. They'll probably give you pretty direct feedback. If you've got a blind spot about something, just ask people who are around you and they'll help you.
Absolutely, and that's actually on here. Sometimes we can't see ourselves, so we may not even know that we are reacting emotionally. We may have been doing something our whole lives and we don't see that we're doing it. And so getting feedback from other people is a huge part of self-awareness for many of us. I read a book called, yes?
One of the practices I've done is I want to know if I am a complainer.
Mm.
So I wore a bracelet. Whenever I complained, I changed it to the other hand. So I found at the first day I found out that I complain a lot.
Mm.
So I said, okay, I will reduce this.
Yeah.
So I started whenever I should change the place of the bracelet. Okay, I want to reduce this. After 1 week, I just complained like 10 times.
Mm.
Then gradually, I was okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's another technique that we can add to our list. I love it. I love it. And a lot of it is just creating that awareness.
Yeah.
What are we doing? We're just sometimes in automatic pilot, and we're not aware. So what made you decide you wanted to work on complaining in the first place?
Since I am a trainer, I'm a communication and behavior trainer,
Mhm.
and positive thinking influencer. So
Mm.
I started to try to find out what are the negatives in my personality.
Yes.
So complaining is a very bad thing. It just takes you to the negative direction.
Right.
So instead of complaining, find out how to solve it.
Yep.
Not just, if you can't find a solution, if the thing that you're complaining of, you can't solve it,
Right.
don't keep evoking.
You're spending energy where you could be spending it more productively. Right? Absolutely. Yes. So the book. There is a relatively new book called Insight, and it's by Dr. Tasha Urich. I think I have listed it here. Yeah, it's listed there on the back of page 13. So she's done a lot of research on self-awareness, and just a guess, what do you think she found as far as the percentage of people who have an accurate self-awareness? What's the percentage? People who are self-aware.
10%.
You read the book? It's actually 10 to 15% is what she found, which is astonishing. It means there are a lot of us who think we know ourselves, and maybe we don't. This is an issue, especially when you're thinking about, you're in a career transition, or you're thinking about moving to a different career. Self-awareness can go a long way. So we think about that in the terms of values. So one of the things on here is articulating your personal values. I had a conversation just on Saturday with a friend who is in the middle of a career transition, and one of the things that she said is, what I have found, she's been in her current job, very successful. She's been there for 17 years, which is a long time. And she said it's no longer aligned with my values, and it took me a while to figure out that that was what was happening internally with me at work, like that feeling of waking up in the morning and got the stomach ache, or just unsatisfied, impacting her personally, and not really figuring out, because she'd been there for so long, she couldn't point to anything, but her values had changed over time, which is part of life, right? So when you're in an environment that is aligned with your values, it's great. You feel that synergy, everything is in sync. When you're in an environment that is not aligned with your values, what are some of the things that happen?
Draining your energy.
Drains your energy, stress, unhappiness.
Take it out on the kids.
Take it out on the kids, the spouse, the family members, the friends. Drinking,
Lack of
eating,
So lack of sleep.
lack of sleep,
Or too much.
or too much sleep.
You can have that.
Yes, yeah,
Or
absolutely.
eat too much. Eat.
Overeating,
Overeating.
undereating. I read recently, and I don't remember where this was. I have to look. I have to figure out where it was. But 2/3 of illnesses are stress-induced.
Yeah.
Staggering when you think about all the illnesses. So that's another reason why I love and I'm so passionate about emotional intelligence, because it really helps you manage your stress as well. So putting yourself in environments that are going to be aligned with who you are definitely can help with that component anyway of managing your stress. So we can come back to some of these other techniques, but what I would like to do because we're talking so much about values, is if you look on page 7, and I want to spend some time this morning on this exercise. So there are a lot of values listed. Certainly this is not all-inclusive, but for the purposes of today, I'd like you to spend some time looking at these values and picking, the instructions are there, but I'll go over them. Choosing 10 to 15 values that you feel are most important to you at this time, and then narrowing that down to 3. So, let's spend, let's say, let's spend 7 minutes coming up with 10 to 15, and then eventually the 3. another 2 minutes. So if you're still identifying, that's fine, if you're still narrowing it down. And sometimes for people that exercise can take some time because it's hard to narrow down that list. But just, if you all don't mind sharing, what are some of the values that you identify as your top values? Yeah.
Spirituality, joy, peace, and love.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else want to share?
Authenticity, health, integrity,
Okay.
independence.
Connectedness, economic security, and location.
Collaboration and happiness, creativity. Okay, since I'm creating something called Word of the Year. So what is your word of the year? My word of the year is stability.
Is what?
Stability.
Stability.
Stability. Which to need stability, to be stable, I need a lot of knowledge. So some like second word is knowledge. And this will lead me to success.
Great. Thanks. Somebody else have anything? Yes.
Achievement, excellence, and integrity.
Thank you.
Caring, collaboration, community, connectedness, healthy numbers, friendship, harmony.
All right.
He's S-style.
We got a healthy list. All right. So one of the things that is important when you're thinking about any career, transition, or your next phase is finding something that complements these values. Okay? So if you look at page 8, what I'd like you to do is to break up into groups of 3. And we may have an odd number, so that's fine if there's some groups that have a few more people. But if you break up into groups of 3, and we could just do a count off, so make it fast. 1,
1, 2, 3,
So let's count up to 10. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
7, 8,
9.
10.
Who said 10?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, 10.
What?
3,
4,
5,
6, 7,
8,
3,
3,
8,
8.
8,
9.
9, in the back,
Yes.
10.
1.
2.
All right. So groups 1 and 2 will have one extra person. All right. So if you could do 1s here, 2s, 3s all around, we should have 2. We should have 10 groups. 4, 9.
9's back, 9's up here.
4. Are you a 3? 5.
9's come out here to Nick.
5.
Yes, that's one. Good. I'm a one with a lot of
Three.
bags.
One.
One, yes.
What's your number? 7. All right, 7's can be up here.
4 is here.
Any 6s?
We're going to go back to 5.
Come here. 7, John, Linda, here.
3s? 3.
9's.
So we have 1s,
Bob's back here.
4s, 3s, 2s. We're the 2s.
Okay. I'm wondering.
We're a 2. Okay, she's a 2. You guys are 2. 4. Okay. What group are you? 6s. Were there any more 6s?
Where's 2? You guys be a group? 2.
Great.
Okay.
All right, has everybody found their group?
Everybody in a group?
10? There were more than one. Are you 10?
Okay.
2?
Ready, you in a group? What's your number? 10. 10? Any other 10? You're 2? Yes. 10, who'll be 10? All right.
Did you find
Right
10?
here. 10.
All right. Okay. All right, so what, everybody's found their group. Just to recap, what you're going to do is work together as a group to answer the questions on number 8. So, on page 8. So, thinking about the values that you just identified, how can you then apply those values to your current career transition? And there's some questions on the top of the page that can help guide the discussion. But we're looking for now how to implement the knowledge that you just worked on in identifying your values.
Rebellious is one of our values.
write mine down here. I've got three. I'll write them down here and then try to fit some stuff in.
How do I want to fit in?
So in terms of let's spend about 10 minutes. We're going to do 10 minutes. We'll spend about 10 minutes.
This is my.
Maybe if you could discuss one more So what might come up that issue? Like, is there an situation where you might find yourself taking an opportunity with another one? So what and this session we have looking for an opportunity. You want to make sure my value. Asking all the questions of the people that I'm interviewing with, make sure, and not getting the correct, not getting transparent response. So I'm asking these questions because I want to make sure it's the right fit for me. Because it's a two-way street. People will say the candidate, the organization wants to make sure the candidate is represented. The candidate also needs to make sure the organization is right. And so they didn't tell me the truth. And when I got in there, I was like, this is not, it wasn't aligned with my values. And so that, for me, that was I'm supposed to be in that situation with people not being transparent, right in the interview process. That was just for me.
That's where I was lining up right now. Like you say, you use other employees.
Yeah, asking them to be I was the next role. I took a course. I was like, I didn't even everybody that I was meeting. It was like I went in, asking for really conducting my own anything they would allow. I mean, I wasn't here, but I definitely had that experience. And I knew how long did it take to get you
Really?
well, my first day on that job, I knew I was like, all right, this is what I was afraid of. And so, years trying to grow. Because I was already at a senior level, so there were some of those jobs available. So it was like, it was the worst year of my career. What was your I was the vice president. I was training. So that experience alone, I'm like, you have to know what your values are. But it was the culture of the organization that was right. And so for me, it became very clear. I have to know my values, what my non-negotiables are when I'm assessing any
one, get it, and then two, move up. And so I was trying to know everybody. It seemed like my mission every company is coming together. And that was not really lined up what their mission was. So I was trying to I found that I could start
hope that can help. Another 3 minutes.
And I'm in charge of an event in August. And 3 clubs that are involved. And one of them might not show up, so I've got to figure it out how to get that club built up and show up. So that's
And you're I was
combo
it's a variation. And for support.
and then what's your I've been volunteering for 10 years.
All right, 1 minute
3 countdown.
Nobody gets paid. And like you said, nobody has well, I teach the class, I'm teaching my and I used to run speaker series, I used to do I pretty much cut back and just teaching He's going to tell
All right, let's wrap it up. All right, let's wrap it up and come back together. So, thank you all for participating with one another in that way. I'm really curious to see what you came up with. So, what group wants to just share some ahas in terms of, you know, what the results of that exercise were? What support do you need? What steps would you take? Oh, he's talking. I know you have hands. Yes.
Okay, I don't know. This has been really tough. I was trying to build my exercise around my 3 priorities, which were independence, economic security, and health. And what are some of the things that you can ensure your next opportunity is aligned with your values? The first thing is to avoid project management. That's one of my avoid IT project management. And it's been a headache. So avoid that, first of all. And try to go into a comfort zone, because the IT project management hasn't always been a comfort zone for me. So it's been added stress and sleeplessness. And what else I need is to, I should say, almost eliminate the past, but network. That's what I need. And the obstacles that I face are sometimes my own self-confidence, age, and I just got some old self-confidence. I feel that I don't write as well as I should write, and I think that writing gets you in the door. It takes you a long ways. That's the thing that bothers me. And the support that I need is just maybe some real encouragement. In this job search, I decided, out of embarrassment, not to tell anybody I'm unemployed, so most people don't know that I'm unemployed, and which I know may not be a good idea, so I wouldn't advise that for anyone. And I need some suggestions as to where someone who's over 60 looks for a job. What should I be doing? And I need a source of income. I have a mortgage. I need income. Yeah. That's the support that I need.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. I appreciate that. You mentioned self-confidence, which is also part of self-awareness, and it's really important when you're, when you're going into a career transition, because people can, when you're going into interview, if you lack confidence, that's going to come through. So the part that's not on that workshop or on the worksheet is we talk about what type of support we need, but the next step is to identify who you can get that support from. So for you, for example, I'll put my coaching hat on for a minute. You mentioned writing as being an area that you've identified as an area that you want to grow in, right? Who can help you when you're doing the writing? So if you're writing, is that in terms of communicating with a potential employer, or how can you get support in that area?
I don't know. I just have a lot of, not people, but I have a lot of online courses that I can take, and I've done that, and I don't see where it has done a whole lot. I have loads and loads of books on business writing or whatever, and I don't know, maybe I just need to really sit down and focus on it a little bit more. Read other people's writing, and it sounds so fluid and creative, and I just can't write, I can't write like that.
Yeah, and the question is, do you need to? Do you need to be a creative writer? I mean, that's something for you to
Not
think
necessarily
about.
creative, but just need to write clear, concise messages.
Yeah. So, in addition to a class or a book, what other recommendations does anyone have?
Outsource it.
No, what you mean outsource?
Get someone else to do it.
There's a great short, I'm sure you may have heard of it already, but The Elements of Style. It's probably the best book you ever read about writing. It's only 40 pages long. It's entertaining too.
My problem is thinking of what to say. That tells me the elements of style and grammar and all that. But my problem is thinking to put it down on the paper.
Right.
I know that.
You need a writing partner who's going to hold you to deadlines and feedback to what you need.
There you go.
That would be a good idea.
Find somebody who has that as a skill, and maybe there's a skill that you have that they don't have, and you all can be each other's partners.
Well, in my last job, of course, my manager would help me sometimes. If something needs to be rephrased, she might help with that.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to get a little coaching in there. And anybody else? Yes.
I found that it was really helpful to me. I had identified connectedness as one of my core values, and that's being connected not only with the organization, but the mission statement and things of that sort. So when we explored the notion of that sometimes they can have, if they do have a mission statement, that sometimes it's not exactly lived out, right? So how do you really verify what they say, or that it's the organizational culture that they profess? So the suggestion was, one way to get to know them is to maybe volunteer in a way, so you get a chance to actually see in real time how they treat their people, how they interact with their people, as well as trying to find people who currently are working there and trying to explore with them if the environment really aligns with my core values. So that was really helpful to volunteer.
Absolutely, because how truthful are organizations when you're interviewing? Not very. I mean, I had my own personal experience years ago, where, I've been in HR forever, my whole career, and even I had an experience where, I was asking the questions, trying to get a feel for what is the culture, is it going to be a good match for me? Oh, yes, was assured by a variety of people and got in there, and I was like, oh my God, day one, I knew this is not a good match. And it was devastating. So sometimes you have to find ways other than, asking, but definitely you need to at least ask. I like the idea of volunteering, and Glassdoor is another thing that has become much more popular. I think I heard you saying something about Glassdoor. Yeah.
Does Glassdoor have volunteer opportunities?
No, I'm sorry. That was two streams of thought in one. So volunteering and asking people who work there, and then Glassdoor is another source. You have to take some of it with a grain of salt, because sometimes the only people that are going on Glassdoor and making comments are people who are disgruntled. But if you see the same thing 10 times, that gives you some questions to ask anyway.
One of our colleagues also mentioned using one of the functions of LinkedIn, which allows you to send a direct message to someone who is in a position who might know. You never know what can come from those.
Absolutely. LinkedIn has opened many more doors in terms of getting information. Who knows? Who do I know that knows somebody who works there? And you'd be surprised how many people are willing just to get on a phone call with you. They don't know you, but you send a message, and you're nice and courteous, and they'll get on. I've had many people hop on the phone with me when I first started my consulting business that I didn't know, but they were doing. They've been doing what I'm doing now for, say, 10 years or 15 years, and very willing to hop on the phone with me and give me some pointers on what to do. So Very good. How important is this work in terms of your career transition?
It's fundamental.
What do you mean by transition?
Well, if you're looking for a new opportunity, you're thinking about a different role, you're looking for your next adventure, whatever that is. Yeah. Which is what 40 plus is about, right?
Yes, it is.
So hopefully, as you think about your career transition, you'll incorporate the values work so that you can make sure that it's aligned with you when you move forward. All right. So we have about, 5 more minutes. I want to share with you some more tools that are in here for takeaway. Yes. Yes.
So one of the things that came up, I'm going to do the same thing, but we talk about a lot of the values. But at the end of the day, there are like three vital basic ones. Like, if you don't have your health, you're not going to be around to even worry about whether you're going to be happy. Because like your health, the economic survival, that's being some mention of mortgage, paying mortgage. And I think the third one might be for those who have it, that spirituality is pretty important. So you had some which were more discretionary, others that were more sort of like, I just need this to stay alive.
Right.
So I guess just what I was going to try to come to was, as you go in pursuit of this, call it role to soul alignment, as you pursue that, there are going to be some trade-offs that cannot be made. So for example, I would love to go and serve 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, but if I'm not making any income, I can't pay for my mortgage.
Right.
So do you have any sort of feedback around that area, maybe more areas for like obstacles? How do we think about that part?
Well, then if you think about, has anyone seen Maslow's hierarchy of needs?
Yeah.
Right? So what you're talking about is your basic needs as a human, making sure that those are covered. And I think that's where you may have an opportunity, or you may have a need to be flexible and a need to compromise. But your core, once those needs are met, the core values still are important. Like the job that I talked about, the role that I had. Yes, it provided the financial stability that I needed, so I could pay my mortgage and I could pay my pay my bills and eat and all of that. So it was fine from that perspective. It gave me all of the basic human needs, right? It covered those. But it was such a and I don't think of the other values as discretionary. I still think that they're important to the core of your being. And so if you have compromise on some of those, depending on how great the compromise is, it could still be it could still have a significant impact on your well-being, your emotional well-being, especially. So you have to find that balance. And then maybe there's something that you're doing, even if it's temporary, and ooh, this is just making ends meet for right now, so there's a way to reframe your thinking around it. Is another thought. I don't know if that answers your question.
But sometimes you really don't know until you're there.
Sometimes you really don't know.
Just really, I mean, you can do all the research.
Yeah, it's the
I
same
mean,
thing about. It's so
you're there a
true.
month and then you go,
oh.
I mean, that's a risk.
Yeah,
That is a risk.
it is a risk. But doing your due diligence and at least getting as much information as you can be very helpful. There were opportunities. How many of you ever turned down an opportunity? And what were some of the reasons?
No creativity.
You weren't
didn't line up.
Mm-hmm.
Routine. I wanted creativity.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, ethical concerns.
Mm-hmm.
If I was offered a job right out of college and it couldn't be taken because it just didn't line up. Values wise, there's certain lines that just
Yeah.
cross line.
Yeah. Yes.
It was very stoic. It felt like I would be working in an environment of robots.
Yeah.
Like a real honest to God proper training.
Training.
No, I mean on the job type.
I know. There's some organizations where it's like you come in and figure it out. So yeah, my point is making sure that evaluation is part of it. right? It's part of your search. All right. So let me tell you what else is in your packet. So there is some homework. We talked about self-awareness. What we haven't talked about is strengths. So we talked about values being part of self-awareness and how you can leverage that in your career transition. The other thing is an awareness of your strengths. So a lot of times we don't see ourselves, and it's not just in terms of what we're not doing well, but there are times that we don't give ourselves value for the things that are the gifts that we've been given. So there is, if you look at page 11, there's a tool for you to do later on. You pick 3 or 4 people that know you well that can give you feedback. So there's different ways you can do this, but really picking people who really know you and asking them, what do you see as my strengths and what do you see as my areas for growth? Or you can say, describe me in 3 words and ask enough people, you'll start to see themes. And you'll be surprised about the things people see in you that you don't see in yourself. Right. There's also a very well-known character strength assessment. There's a link for that on page 13. It's the VIA Character Strength Survey. And then, of course, Strength Finders, which is the Clifton Strength Assessment. So those are all other areas, are the ways for you to understand your strengths and be able to line those up with the opportunity. There is a fee. If you ask your friends or your colleagues, that's free. So just something, make sure you find people who will be honest with you. And there's some tips in there in terms of how to frame the conversation. Feedback is always a gift. That's the approach that I take with my clients. So you might hear something that's constructive feedback. If you do, take it with open arms because that's helpful to you as well. And there's some tips on there on page 11 and 12 in terms of how to do that.
Do you have an extra copy of that?
Yes. There should be,
Again, you completed those, I'll get you on in a few minutes, okay?
all right. And then on page 9 and 10, one of the techniques that was listed was doing a self-assessment. So 9 and 10 is a tool for you to use at home at your leisure, which is a self-assessment tool. And that is really around the emotional intelligence competencies. There are instructions there on how to use that. You're really going to be looking at the first 2 columns. If you want to have other people fill this out on your behalf, you can do that as well. You just make copies, but that's a tool.
Do you have a website?
I do. The website is on the page there. I have cards too if anyone's interested in having additional conversations with me. I have also provided some recommended reading. So of course it's on emotional intelligence, which is there, as well as Strengths Finder. So that's all of your tools for later on. Any questions before we close? Yes.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier about some, you mentioned about fees or some sort of, was it a survey? One survey you said?
Oh, yes, the Character Strength Survey and the Strength Finder Survey. Is that what you're talking about?
So they charge you.
Yeah, there's a fee for those. It's not exorbitant, but
Okay.
it's also not free.
Okay.
Yeah. If you buy the Strength Finder book, then you get a free assessment with the book.
You get your first 5 strengths, the ones with the highest rank, and then you have to pay another fee to get all 30.
34. Yes, 34.
But even the first 5 I thought was helpful.
Yes.
And then there's, in the book, you can read more about what each of the strengths consists of, so it is helpful.
What's the name of the book?
It's Strength Finder.
Oh, the one that's on page.
Yeah. All righty. Well, hopefully this has been informative. I would love to stay in touch with anyone who wants to stay in touch with me. I have a sheet here if you want to just give me your email and I'll add you to my list. I typically will send out tidbits of information periodically. Not a spam, but just a way to keep in touch. And I wish you all the best in your career.
Plus, we have a couple of small tokens of our appreciation, so hopefully you'll think of us in the morning when you're getting revved up and all that kind of stuff. That's great.
Thank you,
So,
Ken.
thank you. Once again, raise your hand if you're new. Blue tags.